Hi. Today I'd like to do a brief follow-up video on the previous video I did a few days ago about being a good comforter by means of being willing to listen, affirm, and feel the pain of someone who is suffering. Now, in order to emphasize how gravely serious this issue can be, I want you to consider a quote that I found from a disturbing comment on a YouTube video I saw long ago, which I believe dealt with Christian suicide. The comment said, "My brother committed suicide. Those around him abandoned him. I heard him never try to feel his pain." Now let that settle in. So we have here is a man confessing to his neglect of his poor brother, who had apparently been dealing with chronic depression. Now it's appropriate for him to feel terrible shame for his neglect, as should anyone who loses a loved one to suicide and they were guilty of not being willing to hear them and support their loved one. Assuming they had been crying out for help due to their experience with some kind of chronic pain, whether it be physical or mental. One of the reasons I'm sharing this information is that although there was a lot of people that actually liked the recent video that I did, which I appreciated, that was very encouraging, there was actually a lot of people that disliked the video. Now, unfortunately, none of those people actually expressed what they didn't like about the video. I'm not sure what they had an issue with, and of course, if any of you have any idea, please feel free to let me know what you think people were so opposed to in that video. Now, assuming they weren't turned off by something more stylistic or aesthetic, it appears that there are many people who simply don't agree with the idea of a Christian needing to be given to listening, affirming, and feeling the pain of a friend or family member or a fellow Christian who is suffering. And I believe the reason there are people with this attitude is because most people, including Christians, can many times not be the most compassionate of people. They don't have a lot of emotional intelligence. I think there can be many reasons for this. I'll just mention a few. Number one, there are generally people who have never known what it's like to suffer chronically, whether it be physical or emotional suffering, where they maybe are there alone for a long time and they're starving for people to talk to and confide in about whatever they're struggling with. Number two, these could be emotionally damaged people. These are people who have maybe gone through some kind of trauma when they were younger. So they have been stunted in their emotional development and may not even be able to cry. They don't know how to relate to people who are suffering. So sometimes such people can want nothing to do with someone who is chronically suffering. They just get tired of them, and they get weirded out by them. And they can tend to want to shun and avoid them. Just a quick request that if you appreciate this video, please feel to give it a like or leave a comment, as that can encourage me and motivate me to make other videos on this topic. Continuing on, the other reason why people can have low emotional intelligence, not be very caring about other people, is simply due to the fact that they're selfish and they're absorbed with self. And are not interested in understanding and connecting with another person's negative feelings. So the idea that they would have to take time away from their comfortable life to be there for someone where they need to be caring and mindful of others and seeking to alleviate their pain is foreign and repugnant to them. But they don't feel much responsibility at all in being mindful of the well-being of their fellow man, including their own siblings. As was the case with the person I cited earlier who was lamenting the death of his brother to suicide. Now, this attitude of not feeling it's your responsibility to care for friends or siblings is the very same attitude that a certain murderer once had, as recorded in the Bible. I'm speaking of Cain. See, because after Cain had killed Abel, God eventually came to him and asked him a question, as we read of in Genesis chapter 4, verse 9, we read, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Where is Abel, your brother?' He said, 'I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?'" Cain seemed to be giving this sarcastic response, which appeared to communicate the fact that he doesn't think he needs to be concerned about his own brother. To paraphrase him, seems to be asking, am I supposed to be mindful of my brother? Am I responsible to tend to him, to be thinking about his well-being, his whereabouts? And the answer is absolutely yes. See, what we see in the attitude of the first human murderer is that sinful tendency of being apathetic towards other people, including your own siblings. And from my experience, this sin is quite rampant in the church, where Christians neglect to meet the desperate needs of the saints, not feeling responsible to care for them. I'm including Christians who struggle with chronic depression, where they can get shunned and abandoned. Now, the church might be concerned with their own immediate family, but the proof that the love of Christ dwells in a person is not so much how you care for your earthly family, but your spiritual family. Many years ago, I was attending this fairly large church in my area, and I thought something that I could do that could help people maybe is to visit the sick people in the church who couldn't get to church. I thought I would, just visit people in their home on occasion with my girlfriend at the time, and maybe lead in a small Bible study and just pray with people. Now, I brought this suggestion up to the pastor, and his response stuck with me. He was so impressed by it, and he said something like, "I've never had anyone suggest doing something like that." Now, keep in mind, there was about 1,000 people that attended this church. And I'm thinking to myself, so no one else has ever thought of doing something like this? See, I didn't think it was a big deal. It's not like it was a significant sacrifice on my part, just to visit someone for 25 minutes to teach the Bible and pray. It's not like I was offering to fast for 3 weeks for sick people in the church. That would be a big sacrifice, as I love eating food and I don't want to go without food. But just visiting someone who lives close by, just to have a brief Bible study and pray, isn't much of a sacrifice. But it seems that based upon what the pastor said to me, that no one in this church ever thought of doing something like that. And I would suggest part of the problem is the leadership. I'm wondering if the reason Christians in the church never thought of reaching out to sick people in a practical way is because the pastor never encouraged them to do it. I don't know. I fear, though, that people in the church would be more willing to do something like that if they got paid for it, for their pastor actually happened to be a salaried pastor. And his example communicates that he's willing to teach the Bible and pray as long as he's getting paid. Such an example can have an effect on others in the congregation, where they might conclude that serving others in the body, ministering to them, can be motivated by an interest in making money. So that maybe if they were offered money to visit the sick, they would. But if there's no motivation like that, they simply lack the love of Christ to think of helping others. I don't know. To give another example, I was in another church, and a man was lamenting to me that when he was in the hospital at one point, no one came to visit him. No one from the church came to visit him. He indicated people from his job visited him, but nobody from the church came to visit him. And just a final example was a woman from India I once spoke to, and she had terrible struggles with depression. She had back issues, and she dealt with a lot of pain. And she complained that the church never did anything for her. Now, other examples could be given. My point is to stress the fact that many believers don't seem to think it's their responsibility to tend to the needs of their brethren. They can be like the murderer Cain and have the attitude, am I my brother's keeper? Am I supposed to look out for my brothers in Christ? Willing to support them when they're in pain, listen to their complaints, and feel for them? This is largely what I wanted to share for now, though I plan to make other videos about this important topic eventually. Of course, feel free to share any ideas you have about why so many people dislike that video I did on the importance of supporting others who are in pain. Do you think some people believe that what I'm asserting is unbiblical? That somehow maybe it's not in harmony with the concept of love? Do you think it's because people simply have maybe low emotional intelligence, or they're just selfish? Were they offended because I mock some of the silly approaches people take to comforting and helping others in pain? Lastly, please feel free to like and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more videos on this topic. And again, just to thank you all to all of you who liked the previous video I did. I really appreciate the positive feedback. It was very encouraging. Thank you.